Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to an unofficial episode of Tales from a Retro Gamer. I say that because my editor and filmer's not here. It's just me and you guys. And I'm going to be talking about something I'm not super proud of, and I'm calling the episode Retail Rage, the great Game Boy Advance debacle of 2002. Now, I've always told you guys I'm going to be honest with you, and sometimes some of the episodes aren't going to show me in one of my finer moments. This is definitely not one of my finer moments. I'm going to be talking about a time in 2002 when I went to get my kids each a Game Boy Advance at the mall. But real quick, before I get to that, this episode, what made me think of this was one of my patrons on my Patreon page, Pete Noel. He asked what my favorite handheld game system of all time is. Wow, that's a tough question. I've liked a lot of different handheld game systems over the years. Probably the one I've played most is the Game Gear. My wife and I used to play this all the time before we had kids. We would take it with us on road trips. Here's we had our little case for it, and we would call it our kid because we would take it with us everywhere we go. We'd, play with it and, had all the accessories. We had, the case here and a bunch of games. I even still have the plastic cover. And we had the outlet. You could charge it. You could play it, hooked into your cigarette lighter in your car. Cars still had cigarette lighters in the early 2000s. And my Game Gear is still in really nice condition, despite the fact that my wife and I both played it for hours and hours and hours. And just a really neat system. And it just really kept us busy. We would take turns driving, and one of us would play it. So I spent more hours with that system than any, handheld system than any other. I also like my Nintendo 3DS XL, nice big screen, clear picture, and I love my PSP. I've got the God of War edition here. You can see the God of War graphics there, and I still have the box. Pretty neat. So what's my favorite? It's kind of hard to say. Maybe Game Gear, just because I spent the most time playing it. We played Chess Master and Columns and Alien 3 and so many great games. But let's get to the Game Boy Advance and how I basically went into a retail rage at the mall. Now, my kids in 2002, they're 6, 7, 8 years old. I've got a boy and a girl, and they wanted a Game Boy Advance, not unlike this one here. And the Game Boy Advance SP, which has a backlit screen, I had heard was coming out the following year in 2003, a few months away. I think when I heard about it at the time, it was 8 months away. And I talked to my kids about it. I said, okay, so the Game Boy Advance is a neat system. It's one they had wanted. Their friends had it and that kind of thing. And they just wanted one and had heard it was really fun, just great. It was cool to play in the car, and kids would play it on the playground, and my kids really wanted one. And I told him, hey, this is cool, but the Game Boy Advance SP is coming out, in a few months, and it has a backlit screen. It'll be a better system. You'll be able to see the games much better. And to 6, 7, 8-year-old, that's not going to fly. That's 8 months, might as well be 1,000 years. So obviously they did not want to wait. They wanted to get their Game Boy Advance. And they had saved their Christmas money, their birthday money, their allowance. They had each saved up enough money to get a Game Boy Advance. And so my wife and I, just one evening, it was probably a Friday night after we ate or something, we went to the mall to fulfill our kids' wishes to get each of them a Game Boy Advance. And they were super excited, and they loved to go to the mall anyway because just, wide open spaces to walk around. And when they were even smaller than that, we would go to the mall just to let them run around like if the weather was bad or something. And so anyway, it was a trip to the mall, which was always a fun occasion. And we went to a store. I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been like Sam Goody or something like that, but that's not important to the story exactly which store it was. But it was just one of these like record stores that also had video games and stuff like that. So we walked in, and the Game Boy Advances were in a showcase, just a glass showcase under lock and key. And I was looking at them, the kids were looking at them, and they had a few different styles, different colors. I think, if memory serves, they ended up getting a purple one. I've got the clear one here, with the translucent plastic. And I think they each ended up with purple ones. One of them might have got that one anyway. Beside the point, there were several different designs available. And there was a young man working near that showcase, and I told him, hey, I'm interested in the Game Boy Advance. Can I take a look at the different model designs? And, he pointed to the showcase, which I was already looking at. And I said, yeah, just, I want to, I want to look at it, look at the box, just kind of see what you have. And he said, well, you can't look at a system, you can't look at a Game Boy unless you're going to buy it. And I'm sure he heard this in a meeting, or this was company policy. They might have even had some stuff stolen. Maybe some teenage punks had come in there and had somebody open the showcase, and maybe they, grabbed whatever, expensive electronic item, maybe a Game Boy Advance, and run off with it. Maybe that was it, I don't know. But he was insistent that I buy it before I even look at it. He would not open the showcase. He would not let me hold the Game Boy Advance. And I was a little frustrated with this and kind of, what do you mean? I said, I've got money in my wallet. It was obvious I was not the kind of person that was gonna grab it and dash, because I had 2 little kids with me. My wife was with me. We're very normal looking. We don't, there's no vibe we're giving off that we're gonna run away with these because we had little kids in tow. And so I said, hey, I've got, money in my pocket. I want to get a couple of my kids, each one a Game Boy, but I just want to look at what I'm getting. I want to hold it. I want to look at the box. I want to compare the colors, just look at the back of the box or whatever. Sorry, you can't do that unless you're buying it. And at this point, I was starting to get a little angry. Now, I am very slow to anger, and I don't really have a temper. I can't remember the last time I lost my temper, years and years ago. And, but this was making me crazy, and because he was just being stubborn, ignorant, whatever the case. And I just said, okay, I'm all set. I have the money. I've got 2 kids here. They're obviously very eager to each get a Game Boy Advance. And so but take them out. I just want to look at them. I just want to hold them. I don't want to buy something expensive like this if I can't hold it and see what I'm getting. Obviously, I could see him through the glass, but I wanted to hold, it's a normal thing. He would not open the showcase for anything. And so I said, I want to buy these. Please open this up and look at them. And by this time, I was getting angry. I'm sure my face was getting a little red. My wife had kind of walked away, and the kids were just kind of looking concerned. And so I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but I huffed off, and I went up to talk to someone behind the register. And I said, I want to talk to your manager. And she said, I'm not going to talk to you until you calm down. Now, I didn't feel like I was particularly uncalm, but I'm sure I was a little more angry than I thought I was at the time. I felt it, but I didn't feel like I was exuding it so much, but I must have had just an intense look on my face. Maybe I raised my voice a little bit, but I was just saying, your employee over there she goes, I am not talking to you until you calm down. So I took a deep breath, let a couple of customers, but do their purchase and everything. And I went up to her and I said, your employee will not, I said, I want to talk to the manager. She goes, I'm the manager. What can I do for you? And I said, your employee over there will not open the showcase so I can look at these Game Boy Advances. I do want to buy them, but he won't open the showcase. And I don't exactly remember what happened in here, but I was getting angrier, and she could sense I was some hostility, and it didn't go well. But what I do remember was eventually getting my wallet out and pulling out all these 20s, because I don't remember how much Game Boy Advances were at the time, maybe $100 and something each. But I remember pulling out, a big stack of 20s. I typically pay for things in cash. I remember pulling out a big stack of 20s and plunking them on the counter and saying, I am here to buy 2 Game Boy Advances. I was going to buy these, but I'm not going to buy them here because you guys have you haven't cooperated, you've been rude, you've been neglectful of terrible customer service, and who knows, maybe maybe my voice was raised at the time, it probably was. I probably looked super angry, and I was angry. It just seemed so unreasonable. And first world problem, obviously, but these people were driving me insane that I could not hold in my hands what I was going to spend all this money for, without just holding and just getting a really close look at what I was buying. And they were just making me insane, so I refused to buy from that store. And I told them, I'm going to go down, this is the mall, early 2000s. There's several, electronic stores in the mall, places that will sell Game Boy Advances. There's department stores where you can get them in the electronics department or the video game department. I'll just take my business elsewhere. And I stormed off. Now, I don't know if she worked on commission. I don't know if the employee worked on commission or if they got anything extra out of, selling, relatively high-end items like this. But I felt like I was justified in not buying those game systems there. And by this time, my wife was, I'm sure, mortified, and my kids were just had gone over with my wife, and she may have even been out in the hall of the mall by this time. All I know is I huffed off. And anyway, walked off in a huff, I should say. And we, walked down the hall, and now I realized I shouldn't have gotten quite this mad maybe, but they were being super stubborn. If I would have been approached it calmly, the manager might have understood, but I was obviously just maybe not quite in a rage, but pretty mad. And so we went to another store. We walked around a little bit, and at the other store, I don't remember which store it was, but that'll play into this in just a minute. We went to another store. I bought 2 Game Boy Advances. My kids were thrilled. There was no problem with this other store showing me the Game Boy Advances. And maybe it was at KB Toys. I just don't remember. And no problem. They showed us. I held them in my hands. We looked. I let the kids pick out the design they wanted, the color or whatever. We bought our Game Boy Advances, and that was awesome. The employee at the other store, he was probably following the letter of the law of not opening the showcase unless you're going to buy something, but he didn't get the spirit of the law, and I was just so mad. But anyway, the kids got their Game Boys, and we were all settled down. Everything was fine, and we went to the other store, got our Game Boys. And so the next day, see, I actually worked at the mall during this time. I worked at Walden Books, and or at least I can't remember. I was either working at Walden Books at the time, or I had quit. I was writing full time at this point, and I had because I was writing for the All Game Guide, and I was doing some other things, and I was dispatching for a garage door company, I believe, at this time. I had different writing jobs. And so I wasn't working at Walden Books, but I still knew the employees there. And I went to Walden Books a little while after this. Oh, actually, it was that day. It was that night. We went by Walden Books since we were already at the mall. And the assistant manager, the guy that was my assistant manager when I worked there, he was working there. And I told him, I said, hey, I told him about the whole thing and told him, ha, ha, ha. And I told him I'd gone to this store and I'd refuse him. And I flashed the money in their face and walked to this other store like some kind of moral victory or something. But no, he told me, hey, that store, that first store you went to, and that second store you went to, that's all the same corporate umbrella. The same corporation owns both of those systems, or both of those stores. So in the end, no moral victory was reached, at least as far as, the bottom line of this particular corporation went. So anyway, my small victory turned out a defeat. I had mortified my wife, and I had, maybe I made a fool of myself. I don't know, but I remember being angry. But anyway, it all ended, ultimately ended okay because the kids got their Game Boy Advances and they absolutely loved them for many years to come. I remember them playing Super Mario Land for the regular Game Boy on their Game Boy Advances, and the car and a bunch of other games. In the car a lot, that's the best place for handheld gaming to me as a kid, because I remember when I was a kid, we'd go to Arkansas several, 3 or 4 times a year to see my grandmother, 4.5 hour drive. It seemed like it took forever. Now, in the late 70s, I had my Mattel handheld, and I had my Star Trek photo novels, so I would keep busy in the car a little bit, but holy cow, would it have been so much better. Time would have passed so much better with a Game Boy Advance. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Like I said, I'm not usually angry at stores. I don't usually go into retail rage or road rage or anything like that, but that was one of my unflattering moments. I appreciate you watching. And thank you so much for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll do a Game Gear episode at some point, since that's probably my favorite handheld system of all time. But anyway, guys, peace out, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good day.